Hello everyone and welcome to the Never X Ever channel. In today's video we're gonna add or continue building what we did last time, and particularly today we're gonna add a battery energy storage system to our power plant. So we're gonna have a PV plus battery power plant, and from there we're gonna see how to calculate the LCoE of the PV only the photovoltaics LCoE. Then we're going to see how to calculate the LCoE of the storage system or our battery system. And then we're going to see how to calculate the combination of them, what I call here the blended LCoE, which is the LCoE of the PV plus the storage system. So looking back to what we did, okay? So these are the inputs that we used in our first video. As we recall, we only had a PV power plant. Everything was being delivered to the load, okay, or to the grid, and these are the inputs. We have the total generation, the PV capacity, the PV opex, the PV capex as well, the insurance, the land lease, the period of analysis, and the discount rate. And at the end of the video, this is the model that we have, okay? So we have the input, we have the sections in here, the inputs, the calculations, the results, and the setup. And the LCoE that we arrived is the $54.07 per megawatt hour. So this is the LCoE for the PV generation. So today we're gonna add the battery system, and we're gonna see how that changes everything and how that adds complexity to the model. So we're gonna look and see how to calculate those. Then the first thing we need to look is like, what are our inputs? What are the other inputs we need to consider? And I just put in here the new inputs. Okay, so the dark blue ones are the inputs that we used previously in our first video, and the light blue ones are the ones that are going to add. Okay, so right off the bat, the first thing that you consider are the different energy streams that we're going to have. Okay, because now the assumption is that our solar PV, our photovoltaic system, is going to produce electricity not only to deliver to the load, but also to deliver to the battery system. And then whenever the load requires energy that is not coming from the PV, the energy will be delivered from the battery system. Okay, so what we have here, so we have the total generation, which is still 45,000 megawatt hours per year. Then I just broke down it into other energy streams. Okay, so we have the generation from the PV to the battery system, which is 13.5 thousand megawatts per year. Okay, so this is the energy required every single year to charge the battery system. Okay, then we have a generation from the PV directly to the load. Okay, so instead of the 45,000 watts or megawatt hour we had in the first video, now we're going to deliver from the PV to the battery system only 28.5 thousand megawatt hours per year. Then what we have here is a generation from the battery system to the load. Okay, so it's 10,125 megawatt hours per year. And we're going to see what's interesting here, okay? Because as you can see here, there is some inefficiency in the system, okay? So in this particular case here, the battery has a 75% efficiency, okay? Meaning that for every kilowatt that is used to charge the units deliver 0.75% of that, okay? And I also added here some curtailment from the PV, okay? So I add like a 3,000 megawatts per year as a curtailment. Next, we have the PV capex and opex, which were all already there in our first video. And then we have the battery energy system storage, okay? So what we have here is basically the same inputs as the ones we have for the PV. We have the capex, okay? In this particular case here, the battery has a price for the capacity and a price for the energy delivered, okay? So this is how much we're going to require in terms of capacity, and 9,000 kilowatt hours per cycle, how much we required as energy per each cycle, okay? Then we have the capex for the capacity, and we have the opex for the capex for the energy, okay? So these are the numbers we have. Next, we have the opex. We're going to have an opex to operate the batteries, which is $15 per kilowatt per year. And we're also going to have the insurance as a percentage of the capex of the battery system, and we're going to have a land lease as well. And last, we have the economic inputs, which have not changed at all. So let's go to the model we had last prepared, okay? So this is the model, and what we're going to do first here is to add the new inputs. So what do we had as new inputs? So let me go and start by adding a few rows in here, because we're going to need it, right? And also what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to start like open up a little bit more the sections of my input section, okay? So subsections for the input sections, because now we have not only the generation, the capex for the PV, the opex for the PV, and the economic inputs, but we also have now the battery input. So I'm going to break this down to a few subsections. The first one is going to be the generation subsection, and I'm going to add these on column B, and I will also let me just redo it. I'm going to just add first here a column. I'm going to just delete it. I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to save as H2. Okay, so this is going to be the generation section, which basically is going to have all the generation streams, and we have a few of them if you look back here in our model, right? So we have, how many we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generation streams. So let me grab these. I'm going to copy these already. I'm going to copy all of this. Let me just paste them here. So we paste them. So we have everything in here. Let me clean this. So this is the generation section. Now let's gonna add the PV section. So we're gonna have a PV section, which I will always set as H2, right? Let me clean here. And for the PV, what we're gonna have? We're gonna have a capex section, and we're gonna have an opex section. So let me clean it. Let's gonna do first the capex. For the capex, we have the PV capex, right, which is in here. We have the cost per capex, right? And that's basically it. And what we can do, what I'm going to do here also, I'm going to already calculate the total PV capex, because what I want to, because the model is growing, okay, it's easier just to have this information here so that we know where it is, and it just gets cleaner in the model, right? So let me just format this as an in sheet. And another thing we need to do in here, let me see if I did it wrong. So it's going to be this times 1,000. Remember the 1,000 we had set in the input, so it's $30 million. So this is the capex input. Now let's gonna do the opex. So I'm gonna put opex in here. I'm gonna also set this to H3, okay? So headings number 3. And for the opex, what do we have? We have the PM opex PV, which is already in here. We have the insurance and the land lease. So that's it, right? So this is the opex. Next, I'm gonna add now the BESS system, okay? And I'm already gonna copy this down here, okay? And I'm gonna call this the economic inputs. Let me save as heading number 2 here, okay? Don't think I'm gonna need this. Okay, so what do we have in the BESS system? We have the capex, right? And for the capex, what we're gonna have? I'm gonna grab the information from our system here. So we're gonna have these numbers in here. So copy, I'm gonna paste them. Okay, so Control V. Sorry, let me just do a bit different. I'm gonna just paste like this, okay? And we have to reformat these numbers in here, so they're comma 0. So we have 3,000, 9,000, 150, and the 500, right? So this is our BESS system. What I'm gonna do here, as I did for the PV, I'm gonna do the total BESS capex, which is going to be USD, and that's going to be equals to what? This, which is the capacity times the price per capacity plus the energy times the cost per energy. And again, we have just to reformat this thing here. Okay, so it's $4,950,000 for the total system. So this is the BESS system. Let me now fix this because this is heading 3. We're gonna add a few more columns in here because now we need the the opex, right? So let me, Control Z, Control Z, H3. And for the opex, what do we have? We can grab the opex here. Let me grab this information here, Control C. And now I'm just gonna paste there. Just get rid of this. This is a percentage. So what do we have here? These are inputs also, so we need to set as input. Right, I'm gonna clean this, and we have our BESS opex in here. And to finalize now, let me just get rid of this. Let me check if everything is correct. So we have the economic. Let me clean this thing here. So we have the economic, we have the generation, PV, BESS, and economic inputs, right? So there's nothing else that we need to do, I believe. Let's see, I hope I'm correct in here. So let's gonna do now to work on our calculations, okay? So this is where we were when we first finished our first video. And now again, because the model is growing, I'm gonna make a few changes in here just to make it read better and be more cleaner, or being cleaner and more organized, okay? So the first thing I'm gonna do to start with, I'm gonna move the generation above, okay? The reason being just because I like to have everything always in the same order. So if I have generation, PV, BESS, and economic here, I want to keep the same organization down here. Okay, so we're gonna have generation, and instead of breakdown, sorry, I'm gonna put this in column B. Okay, and now I'm gonna follow the same breakdown as the previous section. So I'm gonna have a PV section, opex, BESS section, and then I'm gonna have basically the LCoE calculations, right? So let me first calculate all the generations that we need, all the generation streams that we have above. Let's gonna then grab the generation flows from up there. So I'm gonna add here 4 rows, sorry. 4 rows, oops, okay. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna say that generation from PV to, okay, we have 13 here, right? So it's referring to this one here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say this is equals to this, right? I'm gonna paste it down here. So we have all the generations. Now I can just copy and paste this across, and I can do the same here, right? So Control D, oh, it didn't work. Okay, so enter. So we have all the generation streams here, which refers back to the generation up there, right? So what we're gonna do now, I'm just gonna copy this just to have the totals, right? And if you recall from our last video, okay, remember when I told you that whenever you are anchoring your cells or your formulas to cells that are above the cell you're using right now, you have to press F4 twice, okay, or only anchor the number. And if you're anchoring cells to the left, which is the case for G39, you gotta press F4 3 times, okay, or anchor only the column as it is in here. Because now that we are adding more energy flows in here, it is very easy just to copy and paste everything across, okay? And everything should be anchored correctly, okay? So as you can see here, as we move over through 2 other cells, everything is correctly pasted, okay? But let's see what are the generations flows we have here. So we have the generation from PV to the battery, okay? We have the generation from PV to load, okay? We have generation from PV to load, sorry, battery to load, okay? We have total generation to the load, which is the sum of these other 2's in here, okay? And we also have the generation curtailed. Okay, so we have basically, I think here, all the generation that we need for now, okay? I'm just checking whether I need something else. Yeah, I think that's basically it, okay? Oh, I'm just missing one here. Let me just add here. Total generation from PV, right? So that's, how much is that? That's the 45,000. So basically what you can do here, actually I'm not gonna put in here, I'm gonna just bring this down here, okay, because that's going to be basically what? This plus this plus this, right? And it already basically copied everything across here. Okay, so that's correct. Okay, that's good. Let me just Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V here. Okay, so now we have everything we need for the generation of streams. Now we're gonna do the PV section. So let me add a few rows in here. We're gonna do PV, right? And for the PV, let me set these as headings 2. We're gonna have a capex and we're gonna have an opex. Okay, so I might have to add more rows. We're gonna set these 2 as heading number 3. And for the PV capex, what we have is this number here. So I'm gonna just Control X, enter. Okay, so we have this is right. So we are just multiplying by these numbers here. So this is correct. So we have our PV capex. And what do we have for PV opex? Basically, these are the PV opex. So I can Control X here. Sorry. Let me Control X, Shift Space, Control Shift Plus. So I'm going to delete this. And we have our PV opex. So basically that's what we had before in our model, right? So we have the capex and we have the opex. That's good. Okay, I'm gonna also now, I'm gonna use these ones here right for the BESS now. So what we have next is gonna be the BESS, right? So I'm gonna put BESS 82 here. So we have the capex for the BESS. And for the BESS system, what we're gonna have the capex. So let me just put BESS capex. Also, it's a turnkey solution, right? Okay, so that's going to be USD, right? So what is the BESS capex? Let's calculate. We're going to calculate it. So it's going to be what? It's going. Oh, it's here, 4.9 million. Okay, so that's already calculated. I'm gonna Control C, Alt EST. Okay. So I forgot here, but because here we are calculating the 30 million, but we also have the number calculated here. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why I added this calculation up there. So I can just say this cell here equals to this one in here. Okay, and we see that it's in there. So nothing changed. Opex. Okay, so this is the BESS capex. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna clean this one here. And I'm gonna just grab this, Control C, enter. So again, because I anchored everything properly, okay, by anchoring only the column here and the row here and the column here, everything's fine, it's correct. So I'm gonna copy and paste it across, okay. So this is correct. And now it's next, what are we gonna have? We're gonna have the, let me add a few more columns here, rows, sorry. So we're gonna have the opex. And what do we have as opex? We have BESS O&M opex, right? So that's the first thing we have. Oops, let me just fix here. So we have the BESS O&M opex. We have insurance. We have the land lease, and we're gonna have a total of columns in here. Okay, it's gonna be a USD. So I'm gonna, sorry, Control C, enter. And now we need to calculate the opex for the battery, right? So what that will be. So how much opex we're gonna have for the battery? So let's go equals what? Where's my opex? It's going to be $15 per kilowatt per year. So 15 times 3,000 here. Okay, so that's $45,000. Okay. Again, I set the PV capacity per megawatt, but I set the BESS capacity as a kilowatt. Okay, we can also change this just to make it more correct, I would say, or at least use all the same units. Okay, so I'm gonna change it here, instead of 3,000 kilowatts, a 3 megawatt battery. Okay, and the same here for the same here can be a 9. Let me put 9 here. It's gonna be a megawatt. Sorry, gonna be, oops, megawatt hours per year, okay, per cycle, sorry. And here I will have to multiply everything by 1,000, right? So times 1,000, sorry. So it's gonna be equals times 1,000, right? So this is the cost for the BS, and I also have to fix here, right? So let me see if there's any mistake in here after the change. No. Oh, here I have to fix, yeah. So here I have to multiply by 1,000. No, sorry, I'm gonna multiply up here, because now this number here needs to be multiplied by 1,000. So let's do it. Times 1,000. Yeah, 4.9 million. Yes, that's correct. Okay, so I changed the units in there just to be everything the same unit. So we have $45,000 per period. Okay, now as insurance we have a 0. What is that? 1% of the capex. So I'm gonna use this number here. And then we have a land lease, which is what? It's going to be $2.5 thousand per year. And we have the total, which we can add up here. Let me just fix now the formatting. So here, it's gonna be here, right? And what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna copy this piece of code here. I'm gonna paste it here. And I'm gonna also copy this one here, paste here. And now Control C. So just notice that everything, again, because of the right anchoring, everything is correct, okay? So it makes your life much easier whenever you use the right anchoring from the beginning, okay? Next step is to calculate the NPV. And as you can see by now, the model is getting pretty big in a certain way, okay? And what I'm gonna do, instead of having a section called NPV, okay, which is basically this part here, okay, this part here, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just like grab this NPV here, and I'm gonna calculate the NPVs in here, because that's what I need. I need the NPVs of all the energy streams. I need the NPV of the PV, and I need the NPV of the BESS, okay? So let me grab this one here. So because this one is up there, I'm just gonna paste it here, okay? So let me open up this, okay? So this is the NPV in here. What is this NPV here? This is in there, so I'm gonna grab this, plug in here. Oops, not here, it's gonna be this one here. Yeah, I'm gonna Alt equals here. We're gonna format, I forgot to do that. Okay, so this is this NPV here. And what is this? Okay, this is the NPV up there. So Control X, Control N, sorry, Control C, Control V. And okay, so what is this 0? Okay, I'm gonna fix this later. Okay, so let's see. Let me put this is the NPV here. Okay, again, because of the right anchoring, if I copy and paste this across here, we're gonna have all the right NPVs. Okay, so I'm calculating the NPV for each one of the energy streams. Okay, and you understand why I'm doing this right now. We have the NPV of the PV capex. We have the NPV of the opex here, and I'm gonna copy this across here, copy and paste here. So let me check if this is correct. Yeah, this is correct. Okay, and let me copy this, paste this, and paste this in here. Next, let me just copy it and paste everything in here. And basically now we have done, or we have calculated all the NPVs. So one very important question or point in here, okay? If you remember from the first video, I made a point that this calculation here is probably not the best way to do the NPV, okay? It is correct, but you need to understand what's being calculated in here. And this is very easy to see in here, okay? In principle, what you have, like whenever you have an expenditure being done on the period which you consider number 0, the NPV should be the expenditure itself, right? Basically meaning that the NPV of a $30 million in period 0 should be 30 million. But I deliberately left the calculation as it is in here, okay? so that we can deeper or can better understand how NPVs are calculated in the next video, okay? So while this number is not incorrect, okay, or is not wrong, there are better ways to do it, okay? And we're gonna go and dig deeper on this in the next video, okay, to really understand how NPVs are calculated and what the difference is between have the expenditure in the beginning of the period or the start of the period or the end of the period, okay, that we analyze, okay? Remember, each one of these periods in here represent one full year, okay? So you can either have the expenditure happening in the beginning of the period, let's say 1st of January, or in the last day or the last minute of the year, okay? So these are two different kinds or times for the expenditures, and the NPV should be calculated accordingly, okay? So the next video, we're gonna dig deeper on the NPVs, and we're gonna see why this is not the best way to account for the NPV, okay? Now that we have all the NPVs in here, so basically what we can do here, we can delete this subsection in here, okay? So there's an error in here, let's delete this, okay? And let's see what we are going to calculate now, okay? So because now we have not only the PV, but we also have the battery, we can calculate basically the levelized cost of electricity for the PV only. We can also calculate the levelized cost of electricity for the BESS or the levelized cost of storage. And then we can calculate the combination of both, okay? What's going to be the levelized cost of electricity to the end customer who will either purchase the system or buy the electricity, okay? Which I call the blended LCoE, okay? So let's do this in this section here. So I'm gonna just change this subsection to column B. And what we're gonna have here, I'm gonna add a few rows, right? Let me just move up this. And what we're gonna have here, we're gonna have three types of LCoEs, okay? So we're gonna have the LCoE, what I call PV only, okay? And that's the first one. Then I'm gonna have the LCoS, okay, which is the BESS only system, okay? Let me add a few more. And then we're gonna have the blended LCoE, okay? So all of this here is going to be heading 3. I'm gonna set all the column for heading 2, okay? So we make everything correct. Right, so what is the LCoE for PV only, okay? And here actually we're gonna have two LCoEs, okay? Because if you notice in our energy streams, what do we have? We have PV being curtailed, okay? So basically what we have, not all the energy coming from the PV is being used. There's a few megawatt hours per year that's being curtailed, okay? So definitely we're gonna have a cost of electricity from the PV if you were to account for this curtailment, and another one if you were not to account, which is gonna be higher, okay? So it's important for you to understand and see what the difference is, okay? Because the more you curtail, the more expensive your cost of electricity from the PV will be, okay? So that's gonna calculate both LCoEs, okay? So what do we have here? LCoE, PV only. What do we have here? Including, let me just fix, including curtailment, okay? Then we're gonna have an LCoE excluding curtailment, right? So that's the two LCoEs we're gonna have for the PV. They will both be, USD per megawatt hour, okay? Same here. And how do we calculate it? So if you remember from our presentation, the LCoE is the NPV of all the project costs divided by the NPV of all the energy generation, okay? But because we're only looking at the LCoE from the PV, what we're gonna have here are all the costs related to the PV and all the generation coming from the PV, okay? So what we're gonna have here, if you were to include the curtailment, it's going to be equals what? The sum of the PV capex which is this number here, plus the PV opex, which is this number in here, right? Divided by what? By the generation from the PV, or the total generation from PV, the NPV, right? Which is this number here, right? Because this number here includes not only the generation going to the load and going to the battery, but it also includes the curtailment. Okay, so that's the number 5407. Okay, let me just format this number here. It's going to be a comma and it's going to be an in sheet. Okay, so this is the same, the LCOE that we calculated, and if you remember for our first model, it is the same LCOE. Okay, there's no difference here because we have only the cost from the PV and all the generation from the PV. Okay, what I'm gonna do here, I'm also gonna anchor. Okay, I'm gonna anchor everything. It's not really necessary now because we have to change our forms, but I will do it anyway. Okay, next, what we need to do now, if we were to exclude the curtailment now, right? So basically what we have to do, we have to change the denominator of our equation, right? Because now we no longer use all the generation from the PV. We have to exclude the curtailment. So it's basically going to be what? The PV to BESS plus the PV to load. So these two flows in here, okay? And that gives us 57. So what you can see here is because of the curtailment, we have an increase of 3 cents or almost 4 cents or $4, sorry, $4 for every megawatt hour. Okay, it's a 10% increase basically if you were to calculate. Okay, so let's do the calculation here just to see how much we are increasing. 7.1%. Okay, so that's how much we're increasing the cost of electricity just because of the curtailment. The next step is to calculate the levelized cost of storage. Okay, and as for the PV, the storage always can have like two sorts of LCOS. Okay, the first one is what is called the levelized cost of storage, or excluding charging costs. Okay, so the second one is of course the including charge costs. Okay, and what is the difference here? So basically here what we're doing, we're going to calculate the LCOS only considering the capex and the opex of the battery system as if the energy to charge it were free. Okay, if we were to have free charging costs for our battery, how much the LCOS would be. So that's basically what we're going to calculate in here. And of course in the row below, what we're going to calculate is how much the levelized cost of storage is if we were to consider the charge costs. And that's basically always the case. Very difficult to have a free charging cost. Okay, so we will most likely consider always the best way to measure the levelized cost of storage is always to include the charging costs. Okay, but again, I think the important piece of information here is to understand how much is the cost on its own of only the system, okay, and how much the charging cost is adding to the levelized cost of storage as a whole. Okay, so how do we do it? Okay, so the first one is pretty straightforward. Okay, it's very easy because it's basically the capex and the opex, the NPV of the capex and the NPV of the opex for the battery, divided by what? By the energy provided by the battery. Okay, so there's no charging cost we're assuming here, right? So how do we do it? So it's going to be equals to what? The sum of all the battery costs, which is the capex and the opex, right? Divided by the generation from the test pod to the load, which is this number here, right? So this is our number, $42.55. Okay, so if you notice here, the number is lower than the LCOE for both of the PV only LCOE we have, right? But there is no charging costs here. So how do we calculate then the LCOS including charge costs? Okay, so at first the instinct is basically to say, oh, it's going to be the combination of, or the sum of this LCOS excluding charging costs plus the cost of charging, okay, which is the LCoE PV only, right? So then you can decide which one you're going to use, but like most likely you're going to use the cost including the curtailment, because that's the reality, right? So you will have curtailment anyway, right? And then you would get, let me just paste here, $100.48, okay? But this is not correct, okay? This is incorrect. The reason why it is incorrect to make the calculation as it is in here, it is because the battery has an efficiency, okay? And in this particular case, as previously said, the efficiency is 75%. So we need to account for that efficiency in order to get to the right LCoS, including charging costs. So let's see how this is done. So first, if you go above here and you see all the energy streams, okay, what we have here is that the BESS to load is 10,125 megawatt hours per year, okay? However, the energy getting inside or getting the charging energy to the battery, okay, it is 13.5 megawatts per year. So if you calculate the efficiency here, okay, we will arrive to the 75%. Okay, so basically what this number here says is that for every 1 kilowatt hour in the battery, we only get 0.75 out. Okay, so we need to consider this efficiency here in the charging cost. Okay, so how can we do it then? Let's scroll down here, and there's basically two ways we can do it. The first way is to say the following. Okay, so the LCoS including charge costs is going to be equals the LCoS excluding the charging costs plus the LCoE PV divided by the efficiency, okay, which is, what is the efficiency? It is 75, right? So let's going to calculate the efficiency first. Okay, so I'm going to put here the BESS efficiency, okay, so it's going to be a percent. And what is that? This is going to be equals to this divided by this minus 1. Sorry, don't need the minus 1. This is the efficiency, right? So we're going to put a percentage here, okay? So then the LCoS including charging costs equals what? 42 plus the 57 divided by the efficiency, right? So the final number is that our LCoS including charge costs is 119.79 USD per megawatt hour, okay? So that's the first way to do it. There's a second way that we can approach and get to the same value, okay? So let's do it. For the second approach, we need to calculate how much of the PV costs, including capex and opex, belongs to the BESS system and how much belongs to the PV only supplying electricity to the load, okay? So the idea here is that we break the project into two components. One represent the PV system that provides electricity to the load direct, okay? So all the electricity going from the PV to the load, so that's one system. And we have a second system as if the PV is separated only to supply electricity to the BESS and from the BESS to the load, okay? So once we figure out the percentage that belongs to one system, the PV to load only, and the second system, PV plus battery plus load, then we can calculate the charging cost, okay? And how do we do it? So if you look here, the energy flows going from the PV to BESS and PV to load are these two first streams in here, okay? Which accounts for 42,000. So out of this 42,000, how much belongs to the BESS, okay? So it's a very simple calculation, which is going to be equals to this cell here divided by the sum of these two here, okay? So basically what we're doing here, we're calculating the percentage of the flows that goes from PV to BESS and from PV to load, okay? So what we have here is 32% against 32 against 67, sorry, okay? Notice here that we don't use the curtailment, okay? This is not considered in this particular system in here. Okay, so this is the first step, right? Next, what do you have to do now? So we know that from the total capex and total opex of the PV, 32% should be accounted or accrued for the BESS system. Okay, so let's gonna calculate it. Okay, so how do we do it? Let me go below here. Okay, so what do we have? We have that the total PV capex 28 million, NPV PV capex is 28 million, and then we have the opex is 5 million. Okay, so basically the charging cost is going to be what? It's going to be 32% of the sum of these two costs here, which is 35 million. Okay, so what we do here, basically we're going to say that what? The LCoS including charge costs is going to be basically equals to what we have in here, or what we have in here. Okay, so it's going to be equals to the sum of what? Of the battery system, right? So the NPV of the BESS capex plus the NPV of the BESS opex, which is in here, plus what? Plus 32% of the PV capex and PV opex, right? So I'm going to say plus 32%, which is this number here, and I'm gonna of what? Of times what? Times this number here plus this number here. Okay, and now I'm gonna divide by what? I'm gonna divide it by the total generation to the BESS only, right? The NPV, which is generation BESS to load, this number here. Okay, let me see what I did wrong. There's something wrong here. Okay, I have to close one more here, and I have to delete here. Let me see. Yeah, that's correct. So you can, as you can see here, both numbers are the same. Okay, so and then you can see that there is two ways to calculate. So let me see if they are the same. Yeah, so they're exactly the same number. Okay, so these are the two ways you can do. Okay, you can either do it considering the efficiency of the BESS system, or you can do the second way, in which you calculate the percentage of the PV that goes to the BESS and the other percentage which goes directly to the load. Okay, and include that cost into the calculation. Okay, actually, let me just to be a bit more clear here, what I can see, I can put here what is the charging cost in USD. Okay, so this is going to be USD. Basically, it's going to be this number here. Okay, I'm going to grab this number. Okay, it's going to be equals. Let me just change here. So the charging cost, basically, let me see if I did everything correctly. Yeah, so the NPV of the charging cost, actually, the NPV of charging costs is this number here. And then I can change this value here by this number here, right? Let me close. And then you have the same number. Okay, so these are the two ways we can calculate. Okay, last, we are going to calculate the blended LCOE, which is the real levelized cost of electricity that the owner of this asset will pay. Okay, so here let me change this label here for LCOE, or let me see now, blended LCOE. Okay, what is it? Is it PV plus BESS? Okay, and what this number will be? So this is going to be the total capex, NPV of capex, plus the total NPV of opex, divided by the total energy delivered to the system, okay, or to the load. Okay, so this is going to be equals what? Sum of total capex PV plus BESS. So you go here, it's going to be 28 plus 5 plus 4 plus 1, okay, divided by the energy delivered to the load, which is total generation to load. Okay, so this is the final LCOE to the owner of this particular asset. Okay, and then what we have here is just like we're just delivering here the final LCOE. So let me just copy the label here. Okay, so we have, this is the blended LCOE. Let me add the other two LCOEs, right? So I'm gonna grab here the LCOE excluding curtailment, and I'm gonna add here the LCOS including charging costs. Okay, so I wanna see both of them here. Okay, and then I'm gonna say I'm gonna say this number equals to, what is this? This is the LCOE PV only, this one here, and this is going to be equals to 119. Okay, so these are the three LCOEs that we calculated today. Okay, so you can see how they differ and what is the real LCOE PV to the client if we were to have a curtailment. Okay, what is the LCOS including charging costs, and what is the blended LCOE. Okay, so and before we finalize the LCOE of this particular video, okay, let's gonna check if there's anything else that I forgot in here, okay, just to make sure if there's any formatting or anything that we need to do in order to improve the model. Okay, so I don't see anything in particular here, but as you can see now, the model is growing in size and we have more and more rows. Okay, and at this stage I think it's worthwhile already, instead of having all the sections in one particular sheet. Okay, I think it's worth now like saving each one of the sections in different sheets. Okay, and the most important reason for this is not so much because of the number of rows we have in here. Okay, because to be honest, it's not that much considering like other models, particular financial models. But the thing is that like it is never good to have a section in a model where you have both a timeline and only inputs using a few rows, okay, or a few columns, as we have the input section and the results section in the setup. Okay, so let's gonna divide this model in different sheets. So the first sheet we're gonna have is gonna be the calculation. Okay, so let me calculation. Okay, and basically what I'm gonna do here, I'm going to do the following. I am going to reduce this, right, as we have in the other one. I'm going to increase this one here, and I'm going to come and copy and paste the calculations, which is all these parts in here. Okay, so Control X, okay, and enter basically. Okay, and now I'm just going to align these things here. Okay, and now here I'm going to do the same here. And I think I also need to hide the columns in the end here. Okay, oops, sorry. So Control 0. Okay, so we hide it, and then we have all the calculations in here. Okay, one thing we can also do, we can separate, we can have like these arrows here. Okay, Alt Shift right. Okay, we can have these things here. Let me just change one thing. 1 second. I want to, where is it? I never know where this thing is. Okay, here we go. Oh, it's a group thing, so I'm gonna just change the size. Okay, I like more like this. Okay, so we have generation. Then if you press Alt Shift right, okay, we have here, we can have those ones in here, Alt Shift right, and then we can have these calculations in here. Okay, so basically then we can have a model where we can open and close, and you can clearly see very easily what we have in here. Okay, so here we have the calculations. Okay, nice. Next, we will have, okay, let me just add this one. For next, we're gonna have what? Let me get rid of this column, these rows. We're gonna say that this is the input section. Okay, so let me change here for inputs, sorry. Inputs. Then we're gonna have the results sections, which is these ones in here. Control X, enter, and I can basically, in this particular case here, don't need to divide so much into sections because there's not much information in here. We can eventually have a graph here, so let's select Control F1, sorry, not Control F1, Control F1, okay, it's gonna be Alt F1, and then we can have the graphs in here, and you can already see what the LCoEs are. Okay, we can just plug this number in here. We can say LCoE results. Okay, so we have a graph now. I'm going to get rid of these rows. Then we can have a setup. Okay, so let me just paste in here. Again, we don't need this. Okay, we can just have these numbers here, and we can make it a bit bigger. We can get rid of this. Okay, yeah, I think that's basically it. Say setup. I'm gonna make this one the last one because we don't need to use this too much. Okay, so what I also like to do, I also like to have the results sheet first. Okay, and another thing too, but you can do this later, it doesn't really matter. I would like to sometimes I quite often color the sheets. Okay, and let's see, we can use green for the setup. I'm gonna leave the other ones like this for now, but in future models we can also differentiate each one of the tabs we have in here with a different color. Okay, because what's going to happen in future, we also have several calculation sheets. Okay, so then you just want to color them to make sure to be, again, more visually better to the user, so the user understands like what's going on in the model only by looking into the colors of the sheets in here. Okay, that's very useful. So I think that's okay. Let's also create groups in here. Okay, let's fix this. Where is it? Groups. No. Where is it? Here. Okay, we can also look like this. We can do the PV. I want to just add a column here. Okay, and I want to get rid of this here. Okay, and then we have the here, and we also do here alt shift right. Okay, so if we close, that's what we see here. Sometimes I like to fix this. Let me fix this. Okay, and that's basically it for this model. Okay, in the next video, what we're gonna do, we're gonna dig deeper into the NPV calculations. Okay, and see how to better calculate NPV, and also we're going to discuss on how to add timelines in a more flexible and robust way. Okay, we're going to start, instead of using numbers as periods, we're going to use fixed dates, okay, or dates to represent each one of the periods. Okay, so stay tuned, and see you soon. Bye.